idea that China is going to end up like a Western-style society is a nonsense. China will remain China. The Belt and Road has various dimensions to it. I mean, clearly it's economic in that it's seeking to transform the economic circumstances of, in the first instance, the Eurasian landmass, where 65% of the world's population lives, by essentially using the lessons of China's own transformation by investing heavily in infrastructure and thereby trying to transform the economic circumstances of many countries across that landmass. But secondly, there's a geopolitical element, which is that China's political influence will grow with the success of this project, and its prestige will grow. I mean, many countries, as you can see with China's contribution already, many parts of the world have a different attitude, in the developing world, have a different attitude towards China from previously. I mean, they're very grateful in many ways for China's contribution. And then there's also a cultural dimension. I think that if Belt and Road is successful, then the ramifications in all sorts of ways, most of which we haven't yet discussed, not just here, but anywhere, haven't been discussed anywhere. It's going to be very transformative. For example, the way in which polities are constructed and interact in the Eurasian landmass is going to be very profound, because the only way Belt and Road can work is if, for example, governments collaborate and other institutions are created, and on a bilateral basis and on a multilateral basis. So I think we can expect this to actually lead to a kind of revolution, if you like, in governance across this landmass. But I think that's exactly what is needed, actually, because in the world today there is a serious deficit of governance, and I think this can contribute towards that problem. That actually China is part of, and in key respects, the leader of what I will call a great era of global democratization. What do I mean by that? I mean, I don't mean just casting votes and that kind of. That is only one. Democracy is not reducible to putting your vote in a ballot box. It doesn't work like that. I mean, America might be democratic, but is America's relationship with the rest of the world in any sense democratic? Of course it isn't, just like Britain's wasn't. Now, hitherto the world has been run for the last 200 years by a sliver of humanity. About 15% of the world lives in the West. And Japan, it's still 15–16%, something like that. And essentially they have controlled the world. They've got the dominant economies, they call the tune on the terms of trade, they form and run the world's institutions like the IMF or the World Bank and so on. So this tiny minority has run the world. This has been a deeply undemocratic and authoritarian period of history. Now, the most exciting thing, I think, in this period that we're living with through these present decades is the rise of the developing world, and by which I include China. China is part of that process. In the developing world lives 85% of the world's population. In the mid-1970s, it accounted for only 1/3 of global GDP. By 2030, it will account for 2/3 of global GDP. The rich world will go down from 2/3 in the mid-70s, 1970s, to 1/3 in 2030. That is a revolution in global governance, because it means that the majority of humanity will increasingly be exercising global leadership and global power.